Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to the Falling Off the Floor podcast. This is a super fun episode. Also, a pretty deep episode. It's something that a lot of the listeners have been asking for. So, this is a bit of a continuation of my story, and this was the beginning of the end for me. This was my time period that I spent in Boston, which was really the worst period of my addiction and my last run before getting sober. This was a really difficult time for me, and also a time that I realized that pure sobriety and abstinence is the only way that I'm going to be able to stay well. So I really hope you enjoy the episode. Please let me know if you have any questions, and thanks so much. Welcome to the Falling Off the Floor podcast. I'm your host, Austin Becker, and this is your home for adventure, travel, addiction, recovery, the outdoor and ski industry, and of course, redemption. Hello, everyone. Falling Off the Floor, episode 10. Quick disclaimer. I have been sick for the last 2 weeks, and it's really funny. It started kind of like the flu, had, fever, everything like that. And now I feel fine, but my voice, dude, I haven't had a voice in 2 weeks, and we've been putting off recording the podcast because it was hurting so bad to talk. But I finally called, I called you today and was like, dude, we just gotta, whatever. We'll put a disclaimer. I'm sorry. You guys can't hear my normal, beautiful voice that you love so much.
Yeah, it sounds like you've been smoking for the last 70 years.
Yeah, well, yeah, gave that up, thankfully. So, here we go. Episode 10. We had some awesome guests recently.
Yeah.
We had Dano Bruno on, just an absolute legend in the ski industry, and was such a fun conversation learning about Tanner Hall, Alex Ferreira, the battle between Tanner Hall and Simon Dumont, and that whole tension that was in the ski industry for all those years. So it was a really fun episode. But we are getting back to what a lot of you guys have been asking for a long time. We ended last episode leaning into me ending up in Boston.
Yeah. The name of the episode is Austin Does Boston.
Yeah, Austin Does Boston. Yeah, I did Boston, but it was more like Boston did me.
Yeah.
That city chewed me up and spit me out. So, we will start off on how I ended up in Boston. I think we were in the last episode that we were doing a catch-up sort of episode, we were talking about, I crashed the car in Boulder into the church. I end up relapsing several more times after that. I was going to this rehab in Boulder and kept getting in trouble, and I ended up in this place in Steamboat called the Foundry, which was totally life-changing. I gave you guys the rundown on Red Rock Recovery Center, that hellhole that should no longer be in business. Gave you guys that rundown. So everything that happened after that was Boston. After Red Rock Recovery, ended up back at the Foundry in Steamboat. I was doing great there. I was doing their extended care. I ended up getting kicked out for smoking a cigarette in they were a super health conscious
It's crazy
rehab.
that their tolerance is so low.
Yeah.
I feel like smoking is I never met a recovering addict that doesn't really smoke.
Excuse me and the coughing. It's, we wanted to give you guys an episode, so we're still gonna give it to you. Just bear with me a little bit. Yeah. It was the first rehab I had ever been to that didn't allow smoking. It was actually pretty crazy. I was smoking a cigarette on the chairlift at Steamboat,
Yeah.
and somebody that worked at the rehab saw me, and anyways, I got kicked out. I quickly moved into this house with my buddy Nico. Nico is like somebody that I got sober with. He is a guy that has always kind of been in the background and part of my story. He is an awesome dude that has struggled quite a bit over the years. He actually just got out of prison finally. And anyways, he was like really trying to help me stay sober, and I couldn't keep it together. So in Steamboat, I relapse real bad, get driven down to Denver, and this is on my 21st birthday. And I might have gone into this a little bit in the last episode, but it's my 21st birthday. Day before my 21st birthday, I get dropped off at this place in Denver called Mile High Sober Living. I show up, I pop hot, obviously. Usually with sober livings, like, you can't pop hot on drug tests or anything because you typically go to sober livings like after an inpatient rehab, but I was going into sober living fresh off a relapse, which is not usual, but they're like, if you can stay clean, like, you can stay in the house. That's the 26th, and 27th I wake up, it's my 21st birthday.
Damn.
And they're like, you can't leave the house for 72 hours. I fucking climb out the window, 3rd floor of this huge house on York Street in Denver.
Yeah.
Right next to the York Street AA like palace, essentially. It's the super old house on York Street in Denver that's like, you know, this beautiful old home, but that's like the epicenter for all of the AA stuff here in Denver. It's an amazing place. Anyone that's listening in Denver that needs to go to a meeting, go to a York Street meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in this house. I crawl out of the third floor window onto the roof, somehow get down, immediately go to the liquor store. 21st birthday, and I'll never forget it, man. Right on Colfax, like super close to where we are right now, actually. Yeah. East Colfax. I walk into this liquor store, and guy says, "Can I see your ID?" And I hand it to him, and he said, "Whoa, 9 a.m. on your 21st birthday, you're starting early." And I said, "That's right. I'm starting early, baby."
Yeah. It's my first drink ever, legally, or ever.
Yeah. My first drink ever, like 20 rehabs deep. So I relapse. It's a really nice girl, Alice, someone that I've kind of lost connection with, but I actually went to the Foundry with her, and then she was in the women's house at Mile High Sober Living. She took me out for my birthday. We went and got donuts. We went to a meeting at York Street, and they realized that I was shit-faced. Told my house manager, and next day I'm kicked out. My aunt comes, picks me up, who lived in Denver. She was furious. And she said, "You're going to Foundation House in Portland, Maine." And I said, "Portland, Maine? Are you out of your fucking mind?"
Yeah.
What the hell is in Portland, Maine? I had gone there on a family trip years ago, and I was like, what? What do you mean, Portland, Maine?
Were you dropped out of college at that point already, or?
Yeah. At this point, I was on medical withdrawal.
Okay.
Because I kept thinking I'll go back to school. I'll finally get sober. I'll get it together. I'll go back to school. So I was on a medical withdrawal. But my aunt picks me up, and she said, "You're going to Foundation House in Portland, Maine. We have a family friend that went to this program. It saved his life. You got to go." So get on the flight, and I had 2 layovers from Denver all the way to Maine, and I think we've talked about this before. We counted up after I had arrived in Maine how many Double Jacks and Cokes I ordered that day. And this goes to show you the level of tolerance that a true alcoholic like myself can have. I was drinking about a handle a day, that's like the gallon. There's little Leonard. We let Leonard stay in the studio with us today. He's just a legend. So he's hanging out with us, our little orange
tabby cat, Leonard. Anyways, so, I was drinking a handle a day, which is, like a gallon, the big bottles. I ordered 22 double Jacks and Cokes that day between my layovers and my flights. So that's 42 shots of Jack Daniels, which I don't know, what the equivalence of that adds up to, but
like a lot.
yeah. And the crazy thing, man, is I wasn't that drunk, like physically that drunk.
Yeah.
I was able to go through all of my layovers. I show up in Maine. Tim Timon, who legend, good buddy of mine, was not a good buddy of mine at this time. He was working at Foundation House, picks me up, and drives me back to the sober house in Portland, and I make it through like the whole admissions process. Yeah. This is on 22 double Jacks and Cokes. I'm like crazy. Having full conversations with Tim. David Lee, who's another close friend of mine now, was not a friend of mine that evening, was also there. So we get through the whole admissions process, right? And I think at this point they realize, like, yeah, something's off with this kid, or he's just really fucking weird. Get through the whole admissions process, and someone that is, I attest my whole life to, actually, Sam Rotundo. Sam was the director of business development for Foundation House at the time, and he's checking me into the rehab, and he gives me this big hug and says, welcome to Foundation House. And as he's hugging me, he smells the booze just emanating off of me. And he goes, fuck, man. And I'm like, what? He's like, dude, you smell like a fucking barroom floor.
Yeah.
I was, oh, shit, here we go. Here we go. I'm as far away from home as physically possible, like the farthest coast you can get.
Yeah.
Portland, Maine. And I'm getting kicked out of another place. He's like, we can't let you in, man. You got to go to rehab, like an inpatient. So he said, you're headed down. I can't even remember the name of the place. I went there like 4 times. They're like, you got to go down to this place in Boston. Like, fuck. So a lot of these rehabs have these things called sober escorts, where they're like, essentially it's like a driver, like kind of like a private driver, but they're trained to like deal with addicts. So this car drives from Boston, picks me up, and at this point I'm like actually starting to withdraw really bad. And
so they're trying to like keep you sober between the transport.
Well, yes. Not like entirely. They're more like medically trained, a lot of the sober escorts, so they like make sure you're not gonna like fucking die.
Okay.
From what, like, have a seizure or whatever. And I've never been able to pull a fast one on a sober escort, and I pulled a fast one on this guy. I'll never forget this gas station because I used to go to it because, I ended up living in Portland for like 4 or 5 years. So all these gas stations, I would frequent them when I was sober and living there. So he picks me up. I remember it was pouring rain. Like, I walk out of Foundation House. It's just like monsoon, East Coast, heavy pouring rain. And we're driving along. We're like halfway to Boston, and they have these like state gas stations along the interstates in Maine, also in Massachusetts, Pennsylvania. These like big state gas stations, where they're like off the interstate, but they're like technically on the interstate. There's like a pull off on the interstate, and you get out of the gas station, you pull right back onto the interstate. It's not like in the town.
Yeah.
He pulls over at this thing, and I got to take a leak, man. And he says, oh, okay. So he goes in there, and normally they like stand really close to you, and at a lot of these liquor stores or at these gas stations, they'll have like beer or something. So I go in there, and I take a piss first, and he's still pissing, and I fucking real quickly walk out of there. I remember I grabbed a 40 of Mike's Hard Lemonade, and I was withdrawing bad. Grabbed the thing, right there in the gas station. Didn't even pay for it yet. Just cracked the thing. Go. Take the whole thing down. 40. He comes running in there. What the fuck? What are you doing? Oh, sorry, man. You kept, I was probably being an asshole, laughing my ass off. You know, pulled a fast one on you, man.
Yeah, damn.
He was pissed. So we get back in the car.
Yeah.
Anyways, now I'm finally like, withdrawals. I'm not shaking so bad. So we get down to Boston. I get into this inpatient detox in Boston, and we're checking in, and I'm thinking to myself, here's another one. Like, I'm just gonna leave this place and go do more drugs. And so I'm sitting in there, and I meet this girl, and we start kind of hitting it off. And at some point, I realized that it was since my birthday just hit, March 27th, it was my 21st birthday, which was an interesting time because, as we've talked a little bit about on this podcast, I was a childhood actor.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're a childhood actor, there is something called the Coogan Law. Kelly Coogan was an actor many moons ago that very famous, did tons of movies, made tons of money, and by the time she was an adult, she thought she had made millions of dollars. Her family had siphoned all the money away from her. She was 18, had shared bank accounts, whatever. All of her money's gone. So they created this thing called the Coogan Law.
Okay.
And then when you're a childhood actor, you have something called the Coogan Fund. So all the money that you're making, a certain percentage of it by law is put into this thing called the Coogan account. I think it's like 20% or something of your earnings.
Okay.
I knew that I was getting access to my Coogan money on my 21st birthday. On my 21st birthday, it gets transferred into a joint account with my family.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents immediately transferred the money, like, we can't let, it's going to kill him if he has access to this money. And so I'm plotting and scheming with this girl in the rehab, let's go. I've got like 50 grand, cash that let's just go shoot a bunch of heroin in downtown Boston. So I call my parents, and, still to this day, I've made amends with my parents, but, still to this day, this kind of haunts me. I remember calling them from the rehab and being like, give me my fucking money. And I remember just the sheer terror I was putting forth on my parents. And I remember my dad being like, if I send you this money, I'll never speak to you again. Like, you're going to die, Austin. And I said, if you don't send this fucking money, I'm being crazy. So they transferred the money from the Coogan account into my account, and from my childhood acting. And the second I saw that money in my Bank of America, I left that rehab, and that started like the worst stretch of my life. So I leave that place. I call a Uber from the front of the rehab, go to downtown Boston. This is during the Boston Marathon. Little did I know, there's like no hotels available during the Boston Marathon.
Yeah.
Only hotel available was the W Hotel in downtown. And during the Boston Marathon, this was a solid like $600-700 a night.
Oh my God.
But
yeah,
I've got no concept of money. I'm a drug addict. I had the Uber driver. Oh man, I remember that feeling. That Uber driver, I said, yeah, man, you got to stop at the liquor store on the way. And I walked down and I got like 3 handles of good vodka. And I get back to the car, and this Uber driver's like, what the fuck? I just picked this kid up from a rehab. And he's like, what the heck? This poor Uber driver. I just cracked the handle in the back of the car and start chugging. He's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And he still drove me to the W Hotel.
Yeah.
So I show up at the W Hotel. I get the reservation made, and something that some rehabs will do in order to like keep you is you have to give them like your wallet and everything. And at the time, I had signed an agreement that my parents could like be involved in my care, and they told the rehab to cut up all my credit cards, which they did. So the only thing I had was an ID. Yeah, I just had my ID.
Mm-hmm.
So I had no credit card to put down on the hotel for incidentals.
Yeah.
So I show up at this hotel. I go down to the Bank of America with my ID, and I pull out like $5,000 cash. Oh my God, this is crazy recounting this. I haven't done this in a while. Pull out, I think, it was like $5,000 cash. Go back to the W Hotel with a wad of cash.
Yeah.
And they're like, what are you doing? And they're like, we still need a card for incidentals. And I'm like, oh, fuck. So I'm like, all right, just hold the room. I'll figure it out. I'm like trying to get a temp card from Bank of America, and they won't. They say it has to be sent.
Yeah.
And I don't have an address.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like telling them, all right, send it to the W Hotel. Overnight it. I need this thing.
Yeah.
So, being the drug addict that I am and being very resourceful, I hit the streets. I tell the guy at the W Hotel, I said, I'll figure it out. I'll get a card. Can I leave my bags here? He's like, yeah, it's fine. We'll put it in the back room for you. You know, you work in hospitality.
I work in a hotel. I see this all the time. Yeah.
So I said, hey, listen, just hold on to the bags. He's okay, great. So I hit the streets. Boston is a city that will chew you up and spit you out. But I remember hearing, being in this rehab in Boston, that if you really want to get into some trouble, you go to South Boston, Southie.
Mm.
So I take a one-way trip to Southie. I head down there, you know, and you just go to the street corners. There's always drug dealers on street corners. And so I run into this chick, and she was on the run from a rehab as well, but she was like truly homeless at this time. And I had never smoked crack before. I had like dabbled in smoking coke, and she had crack. And so I was like, you know, I was in that crazy mood, just left a rehab. I'm drunk as hell. She pulls out the crack pipe, and I'll never forget that moment, the first time I smoked crack. And boy, did that start a gnarly downhill trajectory for me. We lit that thing up, and it changed my life forever, like in a lot of different ways. I immediately was like, where do I get this? like I hit it and said more. Like,
oh my God.
Mas.
I think we asked you at one point, like, what's the best drug you ever done? And, like, without any hesitation, I don't think it took like a second to like answer the question.
It's
crack.
I always tell people, never snort coke and never smoke crack because you'll like it. It's true. There's like, it's physically impossible not to enjoy that euphoria. Some people don't like coke 'cause they get all like, you know, pumped up and stuff, but crack, man, you know, coke and crack are the same thing. Just crack is smokable. You know, just increased burning temperature. I don't like going into details about drugs on this podcast, but anyways, I smoke with this girl, and I say, where do I get it? And she says, oh, you know, I'll call this guy Sixt. And you've heard stories about Sixt. So Sixt is this crazy dude in Boston, and he spelt his name like the car rental company, Sixt. And the weird thing is that when he introduced himself, he was like, yeah, what's up? My name is Sixt. It's spelled Sixt. And I was like, okay, didn't care, but for sure. So anyway, she calls him up. He pulls up in this BMW, and big, tall dude gets out of the car, and I've got wads of cash.
Yeah.
Like, wads of cash. And he at some point, she told Six that I had a ton of money on me. So I start chatting with this guy, and I say, listen, man, I'm just trying to get a hotel room. I'll buy a ton of drugs from you. Can you put a debit card on this room for incidentals, or a credit card? Yeah, he goes, oh, yeah, no problem. I was like, oh, fuck, here we go. So he did it. We go back to the W. I got this huge, like 6'6" drug dealer coming in, puts his card down on file for my W hotel, and within moments, we go up to the room, and this was also my first. Boston was a first for a lot of things, and we got up to that room. I'll never forget this girl's name. Danielle was her name. And we're actually friends on Facebook now. She's sober. She got her life together. It's actually pretty awesome. But we got up to that room, and she said, you ever done a speedball? And I said, a speedball? That's like coke and heroin, right? You put in the needle and hit it. And she was like, yeah, it's the greatest thing in the world. I said, no, I've never done it, but fuck yeah, let's do it. Like, I was in this like crazy mindset. I'll do anything.
Mm-hmm. Was that your first time doing anything with needle?
Yeah. Yeah, I had been smoking a lot of opiates, smoking heroin, taking like blues, like Percocet blues and, Oxycontin and everything. But I'd never done needles, and I'll never forget that moment. We're sitting there, and that guy Sixt is in the room, and I should step back a little bit. When I first got to the room, and you have to remember all my bags were downstairs, right? So I'd gone to Bank of America, and $5,000 cash is a big fucking wad when you get it in like 20s.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of money. And I had some hundreds, but I was jamming it all in my boot. I was wearing winter boots, and I was like, the safest place that all this cash can be is in the bottom of my boot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Someone's going to have to really come after me to take my boot off. And so we get up there, and I got my bags now, but in the closet there's those safes. And I open up the safe, and I'd probably already bought $1,000 worth of drugs from Sixt.
Mm-hmm.
When I put all the money in the safe, close it, set the pin, done. Don't think about it again.
Yeah.
She hits me with this speedball,
mm-hmm.
and that feeling is a feeling that, oh man, I actually didn't like it at first. It was so overwhelmingly like dissociative that I was like, oh fuck, I was down bad. But at this point, they know that money's in the safe, right?
Yeah.
This is within 24 hours of me leaving rehab. Keep that in mind. We get to the point where I'm like, at this point, I had like kind of rolled off the speedball, and I'm like, let's go party, let's go get fucked up. So we go to this bar, and I start taking shots. Sixt, goes back to being a drug dealer and doing whatever, and we're meeting all these people, and I'm like, hey, come back to the W, we'll have a rager at the hotel. And I remember getting back to the hotel and looking around, and there was like 30 people in this suite at the W. And I'm thinking like, oh man, this is going to be bad. But I'm doing so many opiates and drinking so much alcohol that I knew I was going to pass out and black out at some point. So night goes by, we get shit-faced, and I wake up the next morning, and this suite at the W is empty. I'm talking the fucking TV is gone. Bose speakers, they have gone. Mini bar, smoked. And I'm like, oh, fuck. And that girl Danielle is on the couch next to me,
mm-hmm.
passed out. It's probably 2 p.m. at this point,
Yeah.
I'm like, Danielle, what the fuck? What happened? And she was like, you don't remember what happened last night? I'm like, oh, shit. She was like, yeah, you were like fucked up. Everyone just started taking shit from the room, and you didn't care, and you're like, yeah, take it. All fucked up. And I was like, what? And little did I know, she that morning had texted this guy Sixt and said, hey, come back to the hotel. There's all that money in the safe. So at some point...
Were you like announcing this to everybody that like you have more money like everywhere? Or
I simply don't remember.
Okay.
But Danielle and Sixt like watched me put that money in the safe the evening prior.
Yeah.
Oh, cracking a nice ice cold seltzer. My favorite. So, no, I don't think I was announcing it. I remember the whole time with that amount of money being extraordinarily paranoid because I'm on copious amounts of crack, speedballs, heroin, alcohol. So I'm paranoid. I'm going to have a sip of seltzer here myself. I'm extraordinarily paranoid, and Sixt shows up at the door.
Yeah.
He just walks into the hotel. We're up on high floor suite in this nice hotel, and he knocks on the door, and I open the door, and that girl is behind me, and he looks at me and says, open the safe. And, this is a fucking big dude you don't want to fuck with.
Yeah.
And I was like, what are you talking about? And then he pulls up his shirt, and he's got, handgun on his waistband.
Mm-hmm.
Says, open the fucking safe. I'm like, oh, fuck. I'm like a privileged white kid from Southern California, and I've got this fucking massive dude with a gun. What the hell else am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
I'm nervous as hell. I walk over to the safe. I'm fumbling. Thank God, at some point that night, I had taken like $1,500 or $2,000 or something, and it was in my boot. I don't know what. So maybe there's a few $1,000 left in the safe still. And I walk over there and I open the thing, and I looked at him. I was like, "You sure you know what you're doing, man?" And he just laughed at me. I'm just like this fucking little white kid. Like, why am I talking shit? This guy has a gun, and I grew up in California, man. Like, I didn't even know what. I'd never shot a gun. I was fucking terrified. So I pulled that money out, and I pretty quickly gave it to this guy Sixt. If you want to know the power of addiction, Sixt leaves with this girl Danielle, and I go down, and at this point, it all hit me. I was like, okay, so I just got robbed at gunpoint. The hotel room's empty. And this is like, now we're talking like 36 hours since leaving rehab. This should all be like signs to be like, yo, Austin, go back to rehab. And it was only fuel for the fire. I sat down at the W Hotel in the lobby, and I go down there and I tell the guy, like, you guys got to look at the security footage. Like, all this shit got taken. Like, oh, we don't have security footage on the, whatever, right next to your room. And I'm like freaking out. So they go up there, security goes up to my room, and they inspect, and they come down and they say, we need to charge you for $1,500 in incidentals and the minibar, and the TV's gone, all this. Fuck. I don't have $1,500, and Sixt fucking card is on the thing for incidentals.
Yeah.
I'm scared shitless of this guy. I'm not going to be like, yo, just charge the card on file. The guy's going to show back up with a fucking gun. And, thinking about it now, I should have just charged the damn guy's card and
just bolted.
So I tell the guy, all right, I was like, you can't charge that card. I got to give you cash, man. And he's like, we can't accept cash. And I said, well, then you either accept cash or it's not going to happen. So they called the manager, and the manager said, okay, you can pay in cash, whatever. So I go back down to the Bank of America.
And you just didn't bolt? You just like couldn't, because the card that was on file.
Well, card on file, they've got all my information, man. Like, you know, I'm not trying to go to prison. So I go and get the cash from with my ID from Bank of America. The other problem is that damn temporary card is getting sent to the W. And I also realized at this point I didn't have my passport and I wanted to get out of the country. I had this like thing in my head that I was like, I'm going to leave the country and it's all going to solve my problems. Obviously not.
Yeah.
So I needed somebody to send me my passport, which was in my house back in Boulder. I hadn't moved out of that house yet. And so that's getting shipped to the W Hotel as well. And, oh man, that was so embarrassing. I remember like after, I went and grabbed the cash from Bank of America. I pay them in cash for the incidentals. I leave and I'm like, I'll be back in a few days when my packages arrive. And I'll never forget walking back in that hotel a few days later and being like, hey, can I grab my passport and credit card? And sure enough, they were there. They got delivered. And God, that was so embarrassing, man. I was on, copious amounts of drugs. So anyways, at this point, I'm like, well, fuck this, man. I'm just going to smoke crack all night long. Like, all night long. And I'm just going to be out on the streets. It's too much of a hassle. So I took my bags and I don't even remember I remember at one point I was just walking around the city of Boston with a roller suitcase, like everywhere I went, walking into bars with this huge roller suitcase, smoking crack, doing just crackhead things. And I got, God, this could be, so many things are like coming up in my head right now that could make this episode really long. But I leave the W Hotel and I ended up just being on the street for like several days. I didn't sleep for like, maybe 48, 72 hours. I was just out there on the streets. Just walking the streets at night after the bars would close down. I would just walk the streets smoking crack with my little roller bag. I eventually at some point get an Airbnb. It was like the only thing I could find because it's like the Boston Marathon week. And so I get this Airbnb and I show up there. I meet the guy. It was like a room in a house and really nice, like Jamaican guy. And he's got all of his like Jamaican friends there. And I walk in, they're like so welcoming and giving me shots of like Jamaican booze. And I'm on crack, just being a crackhead. And at some point in the evening, they said, hey man, you should come out with us. We're going to this bar over there. And so, okay, sure, I'll go with you guys. And so I go down there and I walk in and eat it. They're like the kings of this fucking club. They've got like the VIP section. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And it's a very Jamaican bar. So like, reggaeton's playing, everyone's dancing, and I am cracked out of my mind and thinking to myself like, this is way too stimulating. Like, what the fuck is going on? The problem was these guys didn't give me the code to get into the house, right? So at some point, I remember I went into a gas station all over Boston. There's such a crack problem in Boston. They all sell souvenir roses, which I've talked about a lot.
Yeah.
It's essentially a crack pipe, which is the glass tube, and they put a glass rose in the tube, and you can buy, quote-unquote, souvenir roses.
Okay.
I walk in there, I buy my souvenir rose, take, everyone...
From like just a gas station.
Gas station.
Huh.
It's
Supply and
funny
demand,
when,
right?
Yeah, when you're walking around Boston, it's so funny. You'll see pieces of broken souvenir roses everywhere. Like, because people just walk out of the gas station, they throw the little glass rose and it just shatters, and you're left with the tube that's holding it, and that's what you smoke crack out of. So I walk in there, I buy a souvenir rose, and I'm walking back to this Airbnb, and I like realize, oh shit, I can't get back in, and I'm calling this guy, I'm calling him, he's not answering. I'm like, how the hell do I get back in this house? So their Airbnb was on the second floor, and he owned the whole house, but the bottom section was also a unit that he rented out with Airbnb. So this is late at night, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm high as hell, making crackhead noises, and I can't get in. He's not answering the phone, so I start trying to open windows. I start opening the window of the bottom floor Airbnb, and there's like a couple staying in there.
Jesus.
And they're like, what the hell is going on? They're freaking out. And I'm like, oh, shit. While this is all happening, they're freaking out. The guy shows up, and I'm like trying to break into windows. I'm like all cracked out, being crazy. And he's like, what the fuck are you doing, man? And I was like, oh, he didn't give me the code. I'm just trying to get in. And, I'm out of my mind on cocaine.
Yeah.
And I start freaking out on this guy. What the fuck? And he was not stoked.
Yeah, no kidding.
Luckily, the cops didn't get called or anything, but that, so that's probably like day 5 or 6 of being in Boston, and everywhere I turn, I'm just getting in trouble. So I leave that Airbnb, and I look up and find that there's a hostel in this like kind of modern young travelers hostel in Boston, and I call them up and they've got a bed available. So I say, okay, great. I'll come down there, and it's really nice, like really cool, inviting for like young travelers, tons of young people. They've got like, ping pong tables downstairs, pool tables, real like super nice. So I get there, and I'm smoking crack like nobody smoked crack before, and doing as much heroin as physically possible, and I'm down really bad at this point, and my health is like horrific. And so there's a few moments that I've talked about on this podcast where I'm not like a super religious person, but I've had these moments in my life that like make me think like, whoa, that's like unexplainable. Just like weird. And, my whole life I've always written things off as like coincidence.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, it's just a coincidence. Crazy luck. I'm sitting in this hostel. My bunkmates were all gone, and oh, I forgot to add this. I'm robbed at gunpoint by Six, but I don't know who else to get drugs from, so
Yeah.
I call up Six with my tail between my legs and say, hey, man, it's fine. I understand why you jacked, you robbed me. And he's like, oh, you understand, man? And I was like, yeah, I need to buy some drugs from you. Oh, yeah, no problem. No problem, brother. It's fine. I'm so glad we could get past this. I'm really sorry I robbed you at gunpoint, but yeah, I'll come and bring you as much heroin and crack as you need. Great, perfect. Thanks, Sixt. So he meets me outside of the hostel and gears me up. And you mentioned, this is my first time using needles and didn't have a lot of experience. And I'm sitting in this hostel, and this was the onset of fentanyl. So when I was in Colorado and some of my time in California, it was still heroin, like black tar heroin. And I get to Boston, and it's this powder. What the hell is this stuff? And I had only ever smoked heroin, and what the hell is this brown powder? And everyone's calling it China White on the streets. They're like, oh, it's this new stuff, man. It's the greatest thing ever. You don't have to take as much. It's 1,000,000 times stronger. It's the best stuff ever. And I'm like, whole time I'm thinking to myself, like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell is this stuff? And I remember thinking like, whoa, this stuff is really strong. As we're seeing now with this horrible epidemic of fentanyl use and people dying, like police officers and family members or whatever are overdosing just from touching this shit. Like a grain of salt is making people overdose. That's how strong this shit is. And so, I've got a little bit of a tolerance, but I'm pretty fresh out of rehab. And so he Six drops off all these drugs, and I'm sitting in this hostel, and I load up this needle with absolutely a lethal dose of fentanyl. Like 110% the amount of fentanyl that was in that needle would have just killed me. And I don't know if this was like a sign from some god or a higher power, the universe or whatever. And this is, my grandpa, Luis Lopez, in his book had a couple of weird instances like this that he would call the hand of providence. He's not a religious man, but he would call these weird instances the hand of providence. And I guess I look at spirituality the same way. And I'm sitting there and I'm about to stick this needle in my arm, and my phone, it's crazy recounting this because it's so vivid in my brain. My phone vibrates.
Yeah.
And it's like sitting on my lap, and I'm holding the needle and the spoon, and I drop the it scares the hell out of me. It starts ringing, and I drop the needle, and the needle lands on the butt side down, like the pusher. Half this thing goes flying out of the needle. And in the moment, I'm pissed. Like, oh, shit. What the fuck? Look down, and more than half the drugs are pushed out because I dropped it. And not until I got sober did I realize, like, how crazy of a moment that was. Sure, I still stuck it in my arm and did the other half, but looking back on it, this fentanyl drug that I had really no experience with, I absolutely was taking lethal dose, and that would have 100%. I would have overdosed, and I would have died had I not dropped that needle.
That's insane.
And I'm alone in a hostel. I would have just overdosed, and my heart would have stopped, and nobody would have known that I had overdosed, and I would have just died, and another junkie dead. So I look, at my time going back and getting sober, I would often like think about that moment, like, holy shit, like that's crazy. And I remember right after that thinking, like, this shit is so strong. I have no idea what I'm doing. And I actually had like a moment of clarity that I was like, I don't know what I'm doing with these drugs. Like, this is like what the fuck? And I remember I got to, ended up leaving that hostel. Whoa. So in that hostel, I was there for several days. I was shooting up in my feet. I get this horrific...
In your feet?
Yeah, because...
Why is that?
Because I didn't want track marks on my arm. I didn't want people seeing...
You're still kind of like going back to like, you just want that image of yourself.
Oh, yeah, for sure. That was a huge part of it, that it was like, I was still like the clean-cut, competitive pro skier. I would tell everyone that wanted to listen how much I wasn't a drug addict. It was the closest thing to a damn drug addict. I was as I like to call myself, I was a purebred junkie. And it's funny because like a lot of people like that aren't in recovery or whatever, that's like a voodoo term that you shouldn't call people junkies. I'm a fucking junkie, so I can call myself a junkie. So anyone that wants to tell me that I can't call myself a junkie because it's like not a good term, the people that say that are also people that like aren't addicts, and they're just like social justice warriors.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was a purebred fucking junkie. And I'm shooting up on my feet. I'm trying to keep that image of, being a clean cut competitive skier and all these things. And I wake up and my feet are like elephant feet, dude. I can't even explain this to you. And, it's funny. I keep that photo of my feet on my phone, and I used to look at it as a reminder quite often to remind myself when I was in early recovery, like, this is what addiction brings you to. But I had gotten this horrific infection in my feet, and both feet swell up to like, dude, like unrecognizable, like
Crazy.
balloon elephant feet. And it is like I've broken my back, my neck, my collarbone, everything you can imagine. And this shit was so painful, I was crying like a baby. Like, I can't even explain to you the amount of pain it was causing, and I couldn't walk. So I'm in this hospital, and I'm freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, I got to go to the hospital. Like, this is bad. So I get to the hospital. I didn't want an ambulance. The people at the hospital were like, we got to call you an ambulance. I was, call me a goddamn taxi. Take me to...
Yeah.
I don't know why I can't think of the name of that hospital. It's a teaching hospital in Boston. Anyways, they drop me off at the hospital, and I get there, and they can't really figure out what's going on. And I still, right here, I'm wearing sandals and take it off. You can still see the black marks on the top of my toe. So, or on the top of my foot here. I was taking a needle, burning the end of the needle to sanitize it, and jamming it in my foot to release pressure. There was so much fluid in my feet that I would literally poke my foot, and that it was like shooting like 2 or 3 feet up into the air. This like yellow, clear liquid. And so that's another good reminder. Those 3 black marks on the top of my foot were created like stick and poke tattoos, because I was burning the end. I was burning the end of the needle and jamming it in my foot to release the pressure. And so I was doing that at the hospital. The hostel, not at the hospital. So I get there, and they see that I was doing that, and I was like, I was just trying to release the pressure. And like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? So I'm in the ER, and I'll never forget this. I was telling this story the other night at the ski share. Somebody was asking about my time in Boston, and I'd only been there for like 30 minutes, but I had a rock of crack cocaine about the size of half a baseball, like this huge mound of crack. And I, of course, had to go into the hospital with those drugs. So I tell the nurse I need to go to the bathroom, and she wheels, because I can't walk, my feet are so fucked. She wheeled me to the bathroom. I get into the bathroom, she closes the door, I'm in the wheelchair. And my hair was really long at the time. For the viewers that are watching via video, I'll put a picture up on the screen here of how horrific I looked, like unrecognizable. How bad I looked. So I'm leaning over, right? I'm in this wheelchair, and I pull the souvenir rose out of my pocket. I got this crack. I peck the thing up, and I'm leaning over, and my hair was past my shoulders. And it's leaning over, and I light the thing up. Dude, my bangs caught on fire. Literally, and you know how hair burns, it's just quick. Bangs gone in an instant. And I'm like, holy shit. And I'm sitting in this wheelchair in the hospital bathroom trying to smoke crack, and I just caught my bangs on fire. Like, perfect bowl cut. There goes my bangs. And the bathroom reeks like burning hair. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, shit, here we go. I'm like, oh, fuck. I take the crack, stick it in my drawers, take the souvenir rose, stick it under the toilet, and I'm freaking out. And somebody, the nurse is knocking on the door, what's going on? Austin, are you okay? And I got that thing locked. Oh, it's fine. And it smells like fire. Are you okay? And I finally, very scared, slowly open the door, and she goes, what the hell? Where is your hair? And I will never forget the look on that woman's face, just looking at me like, holy shit, like, what are you doing? And I was like, listen, I'm sorry. I was trying to smoke a cigarette in the bathroom. Like, I really needed tobacco. Yeah, you're trying to smoke a cigarette in the bathroom? Man, like, why don't you just ask me to roll you outside? We could have just smoked a cigarette outside, okay? I was like, okay, you want to roll me outside to smoke a cigarette? She goes, yeah, sure. Rolls me out there and smoke a cigarette. And she says, we're going to go back and do another blood test, okay? Okay. And it rolls me back in there and they do another blood test. And doctor comes in and says, Austin, what your cocaine levels in your body have increased significantly from the time you walked in this door till the time you lost your bangs. And I said, cocaine? Cocaine? Do you know who you're talking to? Austin Becker does not do cocaine.
Yeah.
I've never used cocaine in my life.
Never.
So the fentanyl, heroin, benzos, alcohol, cocaine, that was all planted in your blood. Doctor, if you're accusing me of these things, I think I need to leave this hospital.
Yeah.
He said, sit your ass down, Austin. We're going to fix you up, all right? So I'm in there, and I ended up staying like 3 days in there. I was going to that bathroom every 30 minutes to smoke crack. I just smoking so
They
much.
never like search you there? I mean, it's a
No, they can't.
hospital. Okay.
Yeah, they can't. I'm smoking crack like a... And it's funny, I was telling Daniel this the other night when we were talking about this. There was this dude in the bed next to me, big dude, and he was going to be there for a while. He had some like stomach ulcers, I don't remember exactly, but a totally normal guy. And he must have thought I mean, of course he thought I was absolutely insane. He's just like sitting in this bed and I'm getting up every 30 minutes to smoke crack in our shared bathroom. And man, oh man, eventually they gave me some like antibiotics. They stopped the infection in my feet. And I remember walking out of that hospital, and I get to the front door of the hospital, and I'm checking my pockets, and I'm like, oh, fuck. I forgot the rock of crack underneath the toilet in the bathroom. Like, fuck. I'm in the bottom of the hospital, but I need to get back up to that ward I was in, whatever I was in.
Yeah.
I think it was like the 7th floor, so I take the elevator back up there and I say, you gotta let me back in the room, nurse. Like I forgot something. She's like, we can't let you back in here. I said, let me back in the damn room. I need to grab something. I left it in there. Begrudgingly, she walks me back to the room. She's standing at the door, not at the bathroom. And I run in there, and sure enough, that rock of crack was sitting right there. And grabbed it. I said, oh, got it. She said, what'd you leave? And I said, none of your business. Walk out. Leave. And at this point, I was starting to realize like things are going really downhill really quickly. And I was running out of options, and my health was like, at this point I realized my health was horrific.
Yeah.
And a doctor had told me about a year previously I'd come into the hospital because my liver was failing. I'm 19 years old and my liver is literally failing from how much I was drinking booze. Doctor said, if you don't stop drinking, like, you're going to get cirrhosis and you're going to die.
Yeah.
And I noticed that all those symptoms from the failing liver were starting to come back. I was sweating a lot. My eyes were yellow. Skin was starting to turn a little bit yellow. I've got this infection in my feet. All these things, like, and I went and I stayed at this hotel in Boston that was called, I think it was called the Gentleman's Quarters. Really nice 5-star hotel. Oh, wait, no. I stayed at the Four Seasons, which you know about that. I stayed at the Four Seasons because that was one of the few hotels, and, I'm totally out of my mind, dude. Blowing through money like it's nobody's business. Stayed at the Four Seasons. I'm smoking crack in the Four Seasons lobby, like shooting every drug you can imagine.
Yeah.
And then I went to this hotel, the Gentleman's Quarters, and so we're, I've been in Boston now a while, and jumping in and off of the streets. Like, you know, I say I was homeless, which I guess I wasn't. I was homeless with money. There was just nights that I was choosing to literally live on the streets.
Yeah.
And then like go stay in these super nice hotels and then go back to the streets for like several days. And all this time I've got like my phone turned off. My family can't get a hold of me. My family thinks I'm dead. No one can find me. But I got to this gentleman's quarters hotel and I walked in and had this like overwhelming feeling of like I remember just breaking down and crying and thinking to myself, like, what am I doing? Mm-hmm. Like this semi moment of clarity that I was like, what am I doing? And I'm like sitting on this bed just crying my eyes out. And that was like the beginning of the end of my run in Boston. You know, I could talk about the story of Boston for several episodes, you know.
Like, how long were you there, like between getting kind of dropped off to?
It was a while, man. It was a while. Weeks and weeks.
Wow.
Not talking to my family, not talking to anyone, and going like, you know, a lot of sleepless nights, just being out on the streets. Several nights like waking up in alleys in Boston, like, what the fuck am I doing? All with that roller suitcase, man. I took that thing fucking everywhere. I still got that damn roller suitcase. I was taking that thing everywhere, you know, because I had nowhere else to put my shit. And that there was like 2 final days. You know, I mentioned I could talk about this for episodes and episodes, but there's those final days where I was at that gentleman's quarters hotel. I think that's what it's called. And I was going through like at this point going into like severe psychosis, mm-hmm. like voices in my head, starting to see things because I'm not sleeping. I used to get that a lot when I was addicted to Duster for a while, like really bad psychosis. And, you know, I'm having conversations with myself and all along smoking crack. And I remember I took all the towels in the room and I covered up every crack of the door.
Yeah.
And I was way up high in this hotel, like, you know, 17 floors, whatever. And when you're up high in those hotels, you can't open the window very far. You know, you can only open it like a thing. So I had all the doors covered up with towels, and I got this tiny little opening in the window, and I would like crawl down there in the opening and smoke whatever I was smoking and blow it out the window. I remember like thinking like, oh my God, what if someone from another building across the way like saw me? I was like fear and loathing, like crawling around this room going crazy, thinking like, oh my God, somebody in the apartment across the way is going to call. No, Beckstein's going down. You know, I'm preparing for war, and all along I had no reason to worry, but, you know, I was going crazy. So I called my friend who I've talked about on the show before, Brianna Fox, and Brianna Fox saved my life. I'm sitting in Boston. I'm out of options at this point. In the few weeks I was there, I blew through tens of thousands of dollars. I'm talking like 30 grand.
Wow.
Just gone. Running out of options, running out of money, and called Brianna and I said, Brianna, let's go on a trip. Let's, let's go travel out of the country. You know, I still had this crazy idea in my mind. Let's travel out of the country. And she, lo and behold, you know, she's like making it seem like she's going to travel with me, but all along she's planning like an intervention. So I get on this flight from Boston to Portland, Oregon. And when I was in line for security, I had a fifth of Jamaican whiskey that those Jamaican guys from that Airbnb gave me as a parting gift. They're like, "You're the craziest motherfucker we ever met. Like, please never come back here." They thought I was legitimately crazy, like trying to crawl through windows in their house. Like, they gave me this bottle of like Jamaican booze and like as a parting gift, like, "Please stay away from us." You crazy crackhead. So I get up to security and I was about to miss my flight, and I had the TSA pre-check, and I'm there in the front of the line, and I open up my backpack and I'm like, "Oh shit, there's that fifth." Take that fifth. This nice old couple right behind me, right? I crack the fifth and just go, "Well, gotta get this thing down." I wasn't gonna throw it away. I drank the whole fifth. Literally in line at security. I used to be able
Iran people.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I'll never forget this. I finished the whole fifth of vodka. Yeah. So, or not vodka, whatever, this Jamaican rum or whatever this shit was. Take it down, and I'll never forget turning around and seeing this old couple. They had, late 70s standing behind me, and the wife is just like, what the fuck did I just see? And I go and throw away the bottle, and her husband looks at me and says, "I've never seen that in my life. You need help." And I was like, I'll never forget that. Yeah, that was something else. So eventually I get on the flight, and I fly to Portland, Oregon, and Brianna's waiting there at the airport and picks me up, and immediately get in the car, and I'm like, let's smoke some weed and whatever. And I projectile vomit in her car the second I get in it. So that was fun. Siri's talking from my watch. I projectile vomit in her car. We cleaned that up. Little throwback, Brianna, I'm sorry that I'm going to blow this story for you. She's my best and oldest friend, so I can do this. Brianna, when we were kids, we're driving up to Bear Mountain. She got me into competitive skiing, actually, and her dad was an Olympic skier, and he was my coach for many years. And so we're driving up to Big Bear, right? And I'm sitting in the front seat. My dad's driving. She's in the back seat and has like her elbows up in between, talking to us, and we're little kids. And she goes, Mr. Becker, I'm feeling sick. Blah! She had eaten confetti, like pancakes that morning, pancakes with the sprinkles in it, and projectile vomits from the back seat all over the dash of my dad's car, all over me. I then get sick. My dad's, whoa, we're driving on the mountain road. He pulls over. I vomit from her vomiting. I mean, it's like a Three Stooges story. I'm freaking out. She's freaking out. Vomits everywhere. And we still, talk about that story and joke about it to this day. So that it was my payback.
Yeah.
She picks me up, and she's trying to help me and get my life together. So, I had to get her back all those years later. So I projectile vomit in her car, and that was a great start to it. So I get there, and I don't know, I'm getting intervened, and her dad shows up, my old ski coach, Andrew, and Andrew is a very important person in my life that also is like the reason I'm sober today. There's a few people that have played very pivotal roles in my recovery. Woody, Sam Rotundo, Andrew Fox. These guys are the reason I'm alive and sober today. So he shows up and he said, "You ready to get sober, man?" And I was like, whoa, fuck. I knew what was happening. I was getting intervened on, and we're in Portland, Oregon. It's about a 24-hour drive straight back to Southern California. And he says, "We're driving home. We're going back to Lake Arrowhead."
Mm-hmm.
we're going to get you skiing. He was like, so Andrew's sober. He was in recovery for some time, and his girlfriend made the drive with him, and he said, we're going to get back down to California. This is winter at this time, and he said, we're going to ski. We're going to clean you up, and we're going to get you, we're going to, give you your life back. And I knew all along I wasn't going to be able to do his, method of getting clean because I was so far gone. But we drove 24 hours straight. We took one stop for a few hours to sleep. But we were driving back, and he was giving me a shot of vodka every few hours to make sure I wouldn't seize out on him. Because I was a late stage alcoholic, and he's giving me shots, and we get back to California, and he said, I told him, listen, man, I know myself too well, we're not going to be able to, do the whole let's get clean the old-fashioned way. I need to be in, a lockdown facility. Mm-hmm. And he understood, and so I called my parents, and this is the first time I'd talked to my parents in a long time, and I pleaded with my dad. I said, Dad, I'm ready to go back to rehab, and everyone was so sick and tired of me. I said, Dad, please, for the love of God, I'll do anything. I was ready to get sober at this point. I said, please just fly. I need an escort. Get me back to Maine. I knew something was special about Foundation House in Maine when I was there, and I said, I need to get back there. But I knew that if I was left to my own devices, if I got on that flight, I would have never made it sober, and I needed to show up sober. So he obliges, and my last drink was April 18th, 2018. I was staying with Andrew, and we set up a meeting with my dad up in the mountains. I'm back in my hometown in Lake Arrowhead, and we went to this turnout right next to Lou and Eddie's Pizza. There's this big turnout on Highway 18, and sitting at that turnout, and I had a fifth of Fireball left. I hated Fireball, but it's what I had, and that was my last drink. I drank a whole fifth of Fireball and put a straw in it, bent back the straw, took down the whole fifth of Fireball in the car right before I met up with my dad, and that was my last drink. Dad pulls up, picks me up, and we drove down to L.A., flew from LAX to Boston, and rest is history, man. I went, it wasn't easy. I went back to that same detox that I ran from in Boston. I showed up, and I'll never forget that look on my dad's face when we showed up, and I pissed in a cup, and every drug on planet Earth, meth, crack, cocaine, amphetamines, the list goes on, opiates, heroin, alcohol, everything. Positive. And I'll never forget the look on my dad's face thinking oh my God. And that alone was enough to get me sober. I never want to have to see that face on my dad ever again, or on anyone that I'm close to and love. I got to that rehab, and I was there for 14 days. I then got sent to Granite Recovery Centers, which is under a lot of scrutiny right now. A big podcast just came out about that guy, Eric Spofford, that owned the place. He's a sick, horrific person, but he ended up selling, when he got Me Too'd and all this. He's a horrible human being. But so I got sent to, it's called New Freedom Academy in Canterbury, New Hampshire, in the middle of nowhere, sticks. I was there for 90 days, just kicking and screaming the whole time. I almost left on several occasions. I had all my bags packed and was walking out, and I bring up this often that guy, Sam Rotundo, that I brought up earlier in the podcast. Sam Rotundo got a call. He's the guy that works at Foundation House. So I was going to go through that place in New Hampshire and then go to Foundation House. And I don't know what it was. I was ready to leave and had a whole plan to leave. And he called me and made this comment that has stuck with me through my whole recovery. He said, "Listen, man, I get it. This shit sucks. Just make it a few more days. Leave that program on good terms and come to Maine, come hang out with us, and let's get sober. Let's go play golf. Let's get your life back." And he said, "For the love of God, Austin, just let your family sleep tonight." And that line has like stuck with me through my whole recovery. And I think of that often, how many sleepless nights I created for my family, my mom, my dad, my brothers, my sister, everyone. All of those countless sleepless nights, but that man, Sam Rotundo, just saying, "Let your fucking parents sleep tonight, man," like stuck with me, and I stuck it out. I stuck at that program for another week. Sam himself drove from Portland, Maine, up to Canterbury, New Hampshire, and picked my ass up. We drove back down to Portland, and the rest is history. That's where I got my life back. I was in Foundation House for well over a year. I ended up working for Foundation House as their director of creative media. They gave me not only a career path back into what I loved and had a lot of experience in the creative media realm, and their photography and graphic art and marketing, and it was an amazing experience, man. And not only being a client there, but then working there and helping countless young men get their lives back was a rewarding experience in my life. It was a hell of a ride.
Yeah.
It was a hell of a ride. And, obviously I live in Colorado now and I don't work there anymore. It was kind of, after a few years, I realized it was like time to flee the nest. And, I came back here to Colorado and I finished my undergrad. I actually just got my diploma in the mail today.
Yeah, nice.
Summa cum laude.
Hey.
University of Colorado, summa cum laude. Which is also kind of crazy to think about, that I not only was able to get back and finish my degree, launched a company, launched this podcast, got back to, skiing at a high level and sponsors and travel, and dude, it's crazy. Like, this winter was wild. Best winter of my life. Skied the craziest lines of my life, spines in Alaska to all over Utah and Colorado, and just got back from Silverton. We were down in Silverton skiing wild lines in the San Juan Mountains, man. That is
It's a nice taste.
Boy, I understand why they call it the Switzerland of Colorado and the Switzerland of America. It is
fucking nuts. Yeah.
Wild looking mountains, like those just jagged peaks that you can see from hundreds of miles away. It is that is a magical place. We went down to Black Canyon of the Gunnison on the way back, frolicked around in there. But yeah, that is the abridged version of Boston. Very much abridged. Like I said, this could be like 6 podcast episodes. There's like little crazy details and stories from my time in Boston that, will come out in other episodes, but I feel like I was able to get out a lot of the gist of it. I think that, moment that I dropped the needle was an important one for me and kind of an eye-opening moment in a lot of ways in my recovery, that I was like, whoa. I was like unintentionally getting to a point that I knew I was killing myself and I was going to die. And it wasn't that I was like actively having suicidal ideation, but I was also totally okay with dying. I was that far gone. So I'm super grateful to be to be where I am today. It's been a really wild ride. And as my dad liked to say, I used to fall off the floor quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And the name of this podcast, I really knew how to get past the floor and go into the basement and then into the bedrock and past the bedrock, and that term rock bottom it should never be a term that's used, because you can always go lower.
Oh yeah.
6 feet deep in a coffin is lower, and that's where I know, I don't like thinking that I've reached my rock bottom. I like knowing in the back of my head that I can get worse. I can go lower. I can hurt more people. I can steal more. I can do horrific things, and there's always lower. So I keep that in the back of my mind, and a lot of people often say, oh, you got to reach your rock bottom to get sober. And it's like, yeah, I get that to a certain extent. Technically, my rock bottom was Boston. That was pretty fucking low, what was happening during that time, but I always like to keep in the back of my head, like, I can go a little bit deeper than that, and that helps to keep me sober today. So,
so we're coming up to hour 20 here.
Yeah, pretty good, man. Pretty good. What do you got going on? Anything new in your world, Mr. Naveed?
Nothing totally new. I feel like you guys went to Silverton. I met up with a friend from Australia. Pippa, yeah, the spy from Australia, and we went to Aspen. That was pretty legendary. It was pretty fun.
Cool.
She did her first double black diamond. That was pretty sick.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a good decent condition. But we have another big storm coming out. This is most likely.
Well, I just saw on Open Snow, we got this big one Monday, and then next Monday, another system.
We might have an extended season. We'll see.
March miracles, baby.
March miracles.
So
we're looking forward to that. We're looking forward to Gaper Day.
Gaper Day at A Basin, always a legendary day. God, I mean, last year when we had Daniel's little puppy Watson, oh man, that was awesome. We had just picked up Watson down in Utah and brought him up, and he was running around Gaper Day. That was an awesome day, and that was a super deep powder day.
Yeah.
It snowed 18 inches overnight. Who would have thought? April skiing blower powder.
Yeah, we're also kind of tossing around the idea of possibly getting a podcast over there too. That could be kind of chaotic fun. We'll see.
Yeah.
If it never comes out, it probably happened, but it was shitty.
Yeah, it was too wild. We're thinking about setting up the podcast down there at Gaper Day and letting people walk up and talk craziness, but we'll see how that all pans out. But yeah, we got Gaper Day coming up. I got a friend flying into town.
Nice.
Tomorrow, my birthday is next week. The big golden birthday. Actually, this episode will come out on my birthday.
Fuck yeah.
On Wednesday the 27th.
The last year was crazy one.
Yeah, it's not going to be as crazy this year. A little more mellow. Naveed went crazy last year. This guy got me a party bus. Mm-hmm. We had 30 people in this party bus. We went to Hibachi.
Yeah.
Then the party bus picked us up from Hibachi, took us to a Nuggets game. We had a whole box section for the Nuggets game. We all sat together, and yeah, that was an awesome night. This year we're just doing a nice little dinner party at Daniel's house, and I'm gonna ski.
Nice.
I've skied almost every birthday of my life. It was always a thing when I was growing up that my parents would let me play hooky, on my birthday. So I've always skied my birthday. I missed 1 year when I was recovering from the back surgery, but yeah, I always ski on my birthday. So I'm going to go up to Mary Jane and enjoy a day skiing, come back, do a dinner, maybe hit the town and play some pool and whatever. Yeah, it should be a nice day. It's my golden birthday.
Golden.
Turning 27 and on the 27th, so it's my golden birthday.
Golden birthday.
Golden birthday indeed. So yeah, we'll we got a really cool guest that I just lined up today. More information to come, but I got a really cool guest lined up. So for the listeners, you guys will get some more information about that coming up. But thank you guys so much, as always. Thank you for the awesome feedback that we've been getting from the podcast. Thank you for all the support. You guys are the best. And this is Falling Off the Floor, episode 10 complete. Thank you very much.
Peace.
Peace.